Can you imagine losing the love of your life and closing your heart forever? Marcelo, a 36-year-old millionaire, has been trapped in pain for 5 years since a tragic accident at sea took his wife. Now, he lives only for his daughter, Antonella, until a teacher arrives at his mansion and everything changes. Subscribe and stay until the end, because this story will move you like never before. The mansion in the heart of Mexico City stood silent that April morning. Marcelo gazed out from his office window at the perfectly manicured garden, but his eyes didn't see the beauty of the purple bougainvillea or the vibrant green grass. He saw only emptiness. 5 years had passed since that afternoon in Acapulco when the sea took Mercedes, and with her, all the light in his world. Every day since then had been a silent battle against the memory of her screams, against the helplessness of not arriving in time, against the guilt that consumed him from within. Marcelo had built a business empire, amassed wealth and respect, but none of it filled the void Mercedes left. His heart had turned to stone, incapable of feeling anything but the overwhelming weight of loss. The women who approached him saw only the money, the power, the 3-story mansion in Polanco, but none saw the broken man hiding behind the impeccable suits. And he didn't want them to. He had decided that love was a luxury he could no longer afford, a risk too great to take again. "Papa, it's time for breakfast." The sweet voice of Antonella interrupted his dark thoughts. Marcelo turned and saw his 10-year-old daughter standing in the doorway, wearing her pink bunny pajamas, her brown hair tousled. She was his only reason to get up each morning, his only reason to keep breathing. Antonella's honey-colored eyes sparkled with innocence he had sworn to protect at all costs. The girl approached and took his hand with confidence, as if her father were the strongest hero in the world, unaware that inside he felt shattered. "Of course, my love. Let's go," Marcelo replied, forcing a smile. They walked together to the dining room, where Consuelo, the cook who had been with the family for 20 years, had prepared green chilaquiles, refried beans, and café de olla. The aroma filled the house, but Marcelo barely touched his food. Antonella, on the other hand, ate heartily while telling him about the dream she had the previous night. "I dreamed that Mama took me fly among the clouds," the girl said casually. "She told me she's always watching over me." Marcelo felt a lump in his throat. He didn't know how to respond without breaking down in front of her. "Your mama will always be with you, my darling," he murmured finally, stroking his daughter's cheek. "But now, finish your breakfast. It's getting late." Antonella nodded and kept eating, unaware the torment her words had unleashed in her father's chest. Marcelo stood and walked to the dining room window, from where he could see the quiet street of the exclusive neighborhood. The neighborhood children were heading to school, accompanied by their mothers or drivers. Antonella used to go with enthusiasm, but lately she had been more tired, paler. The doctor had said it was just anemia, that she needed rest and good nutrition. But Marcelo couldn't help worrying. She was the only thing he had left of Mercedes, the only pure and beautiful thing in his life. Losing her will be the final blow. "Papa, what if I don't go to school today?" "My head hurts a little," Antonella said, setting her fork down. Marcelo turned immediately, alarmed. "Does it hurt a lot? Do you want me to call the doctor?" he asked, rushing to her side. Antonella shook her head and smiled. "No, Papa, I just want to stay with you today." Marcelo agreed without a second thought. He called the school to inform them Antonella wouldn't attend and canceled all his meetings for the day. Business could wait, but his daughter could not. They spent the morning together in the living room, watching animated movies and eating popcorn with chili powder. Antonella curled up against him, laughing at the funny scenes, and for a moment, Marcelo could forget the pain. Those moments were his refuge, his only connection to something resembling happiness. But when the girl fell asleep in his lap, Marcelo noticed her forehead was warmer than usual. He touched her skin gently and confirmed she had a fever. Panic seized him immediately. He called Dr. Ramirez, the family's trusted doctor, who arrived in less than an hour. After examining Antonella, the doctor spoke to Marcelo privately. "It's just a bad cold, Marcelo. Nothing serious. But she needs complete rest for at least 2 weeks," the doctor explained calmly. "No school, no activities, just rest and medication." "Understood." Marcelo nodded, but his mind was already racing. How would he keep Antonella up to date with her classes? Doctor, what about her studies? She can't fall behind so much, Marcelo asked, concerned. She's a very bright girl. I don't want her to lose her rhythm. Dr. Ramirez smiled understandingly. You can hire a private tutor. Someone who comes to the house and gives her lessons during her recovery is the best solution. Marcelo thanked the doctor and walked him to the door. Once alone, he stood in the marble foyer, thinking about the doctor's words. He needed to find the perfect teacher, someone patient, experienced, with that special gift for teaching children. He picked up his phone and called Carolina. Carolina, principal of Antonella's school. Antonella will be home for 2 weeks due to illness, and I need a private tutor. Do you have anyone in mind? He asked directly. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. I have the perfect person, Marcelo. Her name is Patricia. She's one of our best teachers, patient, kind, and very professional. I'm sure Antonella will love her, Carolina replied enthusiastically. I'll give her your number so she can contact you today. Marcelo thanked her and hung up. He didn't know yet that this call would change his life forever. In a few hours, someone would knock on his door, and nothing would ever be the same. Patricia walked through the streets of the Roman neighborhood with a folder under her arm and her heart racing slightly. She had just received a call from Principal Carolina with an unexpected proposal to give private lessons to Antonella, one of her favorite students, for 2 weeks. The girl had fallen ill and needed to continue her studies from home. Patricia had accepted immediately, excited about the opportunity to help the little girl she was so fond of. What she didn't know was that Antonella's family lived in one of the most exclusive mansions in Polanco. When the taxi stopped in front of the enormous wrought iron gate, Patricia felt the air escape her lungs. Is this the place, miss? The driver asked, also surprised. Patricia checked the address on her phone and nodded slowly. Yes, this is it, she murmured, stepping out of the taxi with trembling legs. She had never imagined that Antonella belonged to a millionaire family. The girl had always been so simple, so humble in her demeanor, that she would never have suspected it. Patricia rang the bell with nervous hands, her simple cream-colored dress and brown sandals suddenly feeling inadequate for place. A masculine voice answered through the intercom. Yes, who is it? Good afternoon. I'm Patricia, Antonella's teacher. I'm here to give her private lessons, she replied, trying to sound professional despite her nerves. There was a brief silence, then the sound of the gate opening automatically. Patricia walked down the stone path leading to the main entrance, admiring the perfectly maintained gardens, stone fountains, and sculptures lining the way. Everything was so elegant, so different from the small 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother. Before she could knock, the door opened. A tall man with dark hair combed back and amber eyes looked at her with an intensity that made her tremble. He wore a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows and gray dress pants. His presence was imposing, but there was something in his gaze that revealed deep pain, a sadness he couldn't hide. Good afternoon, I'm Marcelo, Antonella's father, he said in a deep, controlled voice. Please, come in. Patricia entered the mansion, feeling her footsteps echo on the marble floor. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, designer furniture, and artwork on the walls. Everything spoke of wealth and good taste, but also of loneliness. There was something empty in that vast space, as if it lacked a life to fill it. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Marcelo continued, guiding her toward the staircase. Antonella talks about you a lot. She says you're her favorite teacher. Patricia smiled, relaxing a little at his words. Antonella is a wonderful girl. It's a pleasure to help her, she replied sincerely. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, where Antonella's room was. Marcelo knocked gently before opening the door. My love, look who's here to see you, he announced tenderly. Antonella's face lit up when she saw Patricia. She was lying in bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and storybooks, her cheeks flushed with fever. Teacher Patricia, I can't believe you're here, the girl exclaimed, sitting up excitedly. Patricia approached and sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Antonella's hair affectionately. Of course I came, my beautiful girl. I wasn't going to leave you alone with your homework, Patricia teased, pulling out notebooks and books from her bag. We'll catch up on everything, but no pressure. The important thing is that you get better. Antonella nodded, thrilled to have her favorite teacher with her. Marcelo watched the scene from the doorway, surprised by how easily Patricia connected with his daughter. It wasn't just professionalism, it was genuine affection. That was something money couldn't buy. For the next hour, Patricia worked with Antonella on math and Spanish, using games activities to keep the girl from getting tired. Marcelo stayed nearby, checking emails on his phone, but paying more attention to the teacher than to his work. There was something about her that intrigued him. It wasn't just her natural beauty, with her honey-colored eyes and brown hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. It was her demeanor, her warmth, her infinite patience with Antonella. "Well done, Antonella. That's enough for today," Patricia said finally, putting away the materials. "We'll continue tomorrow, okay?" Antonella nodded, more tired now but with a smile on her lips. "Thank you, teacher. I love it when you come." Patricia kissed her forehead and stood up. Marcelo walked her downstairs, moving in silence. At the front door, he stopped and looked directly into her eyes. "Thank you for taking such good care of my daughter," he said in a hoarse voice. "You don't know how important that is to me." Patricia held his gaze without flinching. "You don't have to thank me, Mr. Marcelo. Antonella is special. Anyone would see that." Marcelo felt something strange in his chest, something he hadn't felt in 5 years. He didn't know what it was, but it unsettled him. He nodded briefly and opened the door for her to leave. Patricia said goodbye with a smile and walked toward the gate. Marcelo watched her until she disappeared from view, then closed the door slowly and stood in the foyer, his mind filled with confused thoughts. Something about this woman had touched him, and that scared him more than he was willing to admit. The following days brought an unexpected routine to Marcelo's mansion. Every morning at 9 a.m. sharp, Patricia arrived punctually with her bag full of books, notebooks, and teaching materials. Every afternoon at 2 p.m., she said goodbye to Antonella with a warm hug and a promise to return the next day. Marcelo had started adjusting his work schedule to be present during those hours, something he had never done before. He told himself it was to supervise his daughter's education, to ensure the teacher was doing her job well. But the truth was different. He couldn't help watching Patricia as she taught, admiring her infinite patience in explaining difficult concepts, the way she turned math into fun games and history into exciting adventures. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew him in despite himself. It wasn't just her appearance, though he had to admit she was beautiful with that natural simplicity that contrasted so sharply with the sophisticated women he usually met in his social circles. It was her essence, her genuine kindness, the light she radiated that filled the empty spaces of the house. "Mr. Marcelo, would you like some coffee?" Consuelo, the cook, interrupted his thoughts as he pretended to work on his laptop from the living room couch. Marcelo looked up and noticed Consuelo watching him with a knowing smile. The woman had worked for his family since before he was born and knew him better than anyone. "Yes, thank you, Consuelo," he replied, returning his attention to the screen. But as soon as the cook walked away, his eyes drifted back to the staircase, where he could hear Patricia's sweet voice teaching Antonella about the states of Mexico. Her laughter mingled with his daughter's, creating a melody that stirred something inside him. Marcelo closed his laptop with more force than necessary. What was happening to him? For 5 years, he had built walls around his heart, protecting himself from the pain of loving and losing again. He couldn't let those walls crumble for a primary school teacher he barely knew. It was ridiculous, irrational, dangerous. That afternoon, when Patricia came downstairs after finishing the lesson, Marcelo was waiting for her in the foyer. He had resolved to keep things strictly professional, to remind himself that she was just his daughter's temporary employee. "How's Antonella doing with her lessons?" he asked formally, crossing his arms over his chest. Patricia stopped on the last step, surprised by the sudden coldness in his voice. Over the past few days, Marcelo had been cordial, even kind. This change in attitude threw her off. "She's doing very well, sir. She's a very dedicated student. She's almost caught up with the entire curriculum," Patricia replied, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder. You have nothing to worry about. Marcelo nodded briefly, his expression revealing nothing. Perfect, that's what I expect. After all, that's what I'm paying you for. The words came out harsher than he intended. Patricia blinked, feeling as though she'd been slapped. Until that moment, she had believed there was a mutual respect growing between them, perhaps even the start of friendship, but those words put her firmly in her place, painfully clear. Of course, Mr. Marcelo, I won't forget that, she replied in a controlled voice, though she felt a lump in her throat. With your permission, I'll take my leave. She walked to the door without waiting for a response, her back straight and head held high. Marcelo watched her leave, feeling a pang of guilt in his chest. Why had he been so cruel? She didn't deserve that treatment. But it was necessary, he told himself. He needed to keep his distance, to remind them both of their roles in this equation. When the door closed behind Patricia, Marcelo was left alone in the silence of the mansion. He climbed the stairs slowly and entered his daughter's room. Antonella was sitting on her bed, organizing her notebooks, but when she saw her father, she frowned. Why were you rude to teacher Patricia, Papa? The girl asked in a reproachful tone. I heard everything from up here. Marcelo was speechless. He didn't know Antonella had overheard the conversation. He sat on the bed beside her, searching for the right words. I wasn't rude, my love. I was just being clear about things. He tried to explain, but even to his own ears, it sounded weak. Yes, you were rude, Antonella insisted, crossing her arms. Teacher Patricia is so good to me. She doesn't deserve you talking to her like that. She reminds me of Mama, you know? She has that same way of making everything less sad. Her words hit Marcelo like a punch to the stomach. He felt the air leave his lungs. How could he explain to a 10-year-old that was exactly why he was so afraid? Because Patricia reminded him of what he had lost, showed him what he could have again if he dared to take the risk. And that risk terrified him more than anything in the world. I'm sorry, my darling, you're right. Tomorrow I'll apologize to her, Marcelo promised, hugging his daughter. Antonella hugged him back, but Marcelo could feel her disappointment. That night he couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in his king-size bed in the room he had once shared with Mercedes, which now felt like an empty tomb. Antonella's words echoed in his mind over and over. The next day, when Patricia arrived at 9 a.m. as always, Marcelo was waiting for her at the door. She greeted him with a professional, cold, distant smile, and Marcelo knew that repairing the damage he had caused wouldn't be as simple as he had hoped. It took 3 days before Marcelo found the moment and the courage to apologize to Patricia. He wasn't a man accustomed to saying sorry. In his business world, admitting a mistake was showing weakness, and weakness came at a high price. But this was different. This wasn't about a contract or a board meeting. This was about a woman who had come into his home seeking nothing more than to help his daughter, and he had hurt her with his pride and fear. That morning, when Patricia finished her lesson and came downstairs as usual, Marcelo was waiting in the living room with 2 cups of freshly brewed coffee. She stopped when she saw him, surprised by the gesture. Do you have a moment? Marcelo asked, gesturing to the couch across from him. I'd like to talk to you. Patricia hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded and sat down. She accepted the coffee cup he offered, holding it between her hands as if it were a shield. Marcelo sat across from her, searching for the right words. I want to apologize for my behavior the other day, he began, looking directly into her eyes. I was rude, unfair, and you didn't deserve that treatment. The truth is, I'm not used to this. To what? Patricia asked cautiously, taking a sip of her coffee. Marcelo sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. To someone caring for Antonella with so much love, expecting nothing in return. To my daughter, lighting up every time you arrive. To this house feeling less empty when you're here, he admitted in a hoarse voice. And that scares me, Patricia. It scares me because a long time ago, I decided it was safer not to feel anything. Patricia watched him in silence, seeing for the first time the vulnerable man hiding behind a mask of coldness. She could see the pain in his eyes, the invisible scars he carried in his soul. You don't have to be afraid of me, Mr. Marcelo, she said softly. I'm only here to help Antonella. Nothing more. Marcelo nodded, though both knew those words weren't entirely true. Something was growing between them, something subtle but undeniable. He felt it every time she entered the room, every time their eyes met by accident, every time he heard her laugh with his daughter. The following days brought a palpable change in the dynamic of the house. Marcelo began participating more in Antonella's lessons, sitting with them during history and geography classes, sharing anecdotes from his own business trips that enriched Patricia's teachings. The girl was thrilled to have her father so present, and Patricia couldn't deny that she enjoyed those shared moments. One afternoon, while Antonella worked on math exercises, Marcelo and Patricia talked quietly in a corner of the room. "Tell me about yourself," Marcelo asked with genuine interest. "Have you always wanted to be a teacher?" Patricia smiled, surprised by the personal question. "Since I was a child. My mom is a widow. She worked very hard to give me an education. She always told me that knowledge was the only wealth no one could take away," she replied with nostalgia. "When I graduated, I knew I wanted to do the same for other children, give them the tools to build their own dreams." Marcelo listened attentively, admiring the passion in her voice. "What you do is noble," he commented. "In my world, most people only think about accumulating money and power. It's refreshing to meet someone with different values." "Money isn't bad, Mr. Marcelo," Patricia said diplomatically, "but it can't buy the things that truly matter. Love, health, inner peace. Those things are built differently." Marcelo fell silent, reflecting on her words. For years, he had believed he could protect Antonella with his fortune, give her everything money could buy. But in the past 2 weeks, he had seen his daughter flourish with something as simple as a teacher's attention and care. That was priceless. "Papa, teacher, can you help me with this problem?" Antonella interrupted, holding up her notebook. The two approached the bed, one on each side of the girl, and together they solved the exercise. Marcelo noticed how their hands almost brushed over the notebook, how Patricia's subtle perfume, a mix of jasmine and vanilla, filled his senses. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine what it would be like if this were his permanent reality. If every afternoon could be like this, the three of them together like a family. The thought scared him so much that he had to step back. That night, after Patricia left, Antonella ate dinner with more appetite than she'd had in weeks. Her fever had completely disappeared, and her cheeks had regained their rosy color. "Papa, can I ask you something?" the girl said as she ate her tortilla soup. Marcelo set down his fork and gave her his full attention. "Anything you want, my love." Antonella took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for what she was about to say. "When I'm completely better, can we go to the beach? To the same beach where Mama died. I want to bring her flowers." Marcelo's fork fell onto his plate with a metallic clatter. His face paled, and he felt the air leave his lungs. The beach in Acapulco. The place where he had lost Mercedes. He hadn't returned there in 5 years. He couldn't even think about that place without the memories tearing him apart. "Antonella, I don't know if that's a good idea," he murmured, feeling the walls closing in around him. The girl took his hand firmly, with maturity beyond her 10 years. "I need to say goodbye to her, Papa. I need to tell her I miss her, but that I'm okay, and you need to say goodbye too." Marcelo looked at his daughter with teary eyes. When had she grown so much? When had she become so wise? He couldn't respond, but something inside him began to crack, and he knew that her request would change everything he thought he knew about himself. Nights had become Marcelo's worst enemy. Every time he closed his eyes, the images returned with brutal clarity. Mercedes swimming in the Acapulco Sea, her melodious laughter blending with the sound of the waves, the exact moment a current dragged her under while he ran desperately across the sand. He remembered his own screams for help, the salty taste of the water in his mouth as he swam toward her with all his strength, the overwhelming helplessness when he realized he wouldn't reach her in time. The paramedics had taken endless minutes to pull her from the water, but it was too late. Mercedes was gone, and with her, all the light in his world. For 5 years, Marcelo had carried the guilt like an iron cross on his back. He blamed himself for agreeing to go to that beach, for not being closer to her, for not being fast enough. He even blamed himself for still being alive while she rested in the Coyoacan cemetery. That guilt had turned him into a man of stone. incapable of opening himself to love because, deep down, he believed he didn't deserve it. Now, with Antonella's request echoing in his mind, Marcelo faced the possibility of returning to that cursed place. The idea terrified him so much that he had spent 3 sleepless nights, tossing and turning, sweating coldly, reliving every second of that tragedy. How could he take his daughter to the place where her mother died? What kind of father would do that? But at the same time, he saw in Antonella's eyes a deep need, a search for closure that he himself had never had. Perhaps his daughter was braver than he was. Perhaps she understood something he refused to accept. The next morning, when Patricia arrived at the mansion, Marcelo was waiting in the living room with an anguished expression she hadn't seen before. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his white shirt was wrinkled, as if he'd put it on without care. "Good morning, Mr. Marcelo. Are you okay?" Patricia asked with genuine concern. Marcelo looked up and saw her, as if she were a lifeline in the middle of the ocean. "Patricia, I need to talk to you. It's important," he said in a hoarse voice. Patricia set her bag on the couch and sat across from him, giving him her full attention. Marcelo took a deep breath, preparing to open a wound he had kept closed for years. Antonella asked him to take her to Acapulco, to the beach where her mother died. He began, his voice breaking slightly. "She wants to bring flowers to the sea, to say goodbye to her, and I don't know if I can do it. I haven't been back to that place since the accident." Patricia felt her heart tighten at the evident pain in Marcelo's eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and gently touched his hand. "What happened that day, Marcelo?" she asked softly, using his first name without the formal Mr. for the first time. Marcelo closed his eyes, and the tears he had held back for years began to slide down his cheeks. Patricia didn't pull her hand away, but squeezed his tighter, offering the silent support he needed. "It was my fault," he whispered finally. "I chose that beach because it was less crowded. Mercedes wanted to go to a more popular one, but I insisted. If I had listened, if we had gone where she wanted, there would have been more people nearby, more lifeguards. She would still be alive." "Marcelo, look at me," Patricia said firmly. When he opened his eyes, she continued, "It wasn't your fault. Accidents are just that, accidents. No one can predict when life will change in a second. You can't keep punishing yourself for something beyond your control." Marcelo shook his head, unable to accept her words. "I should have saved her. I'm her husband. I was supposed to protect her, and I failed. Every night I dream of that moment, her screams for help, my own uselessness. How can I go back to that place? How can I stand on that sand without falling apart?" Patricia felt tears welling in her own eyes at his pain. She stood from her seat and sat next to Marcelo on the couch, taking both his hands in hers. "You don't have to do it alone," she said with conviction. "If you decide to go, I'll go with you. Antonella needs you. She needs you to be strong for her. And maybe, just maybe, you need that closure too, the forgiveness you refuse to give yourself." Marcelo looked at her in astonishment, unable to understand why this woman, who had only known him for 2 weeks, was willing to walk with him through his personal hell. "Why would you do that for me?" he asked in a barely audible voice. "Because I see the good man you are beneath all that pain," Patricia replied honestly. "Because Antonella loves you and deserves to have her father whole, not just a half that's left after the tragedy. And because I care about you." They sat in silence, looking into each other's eyes, feeling something deep and undeniable weaving between them. Marcelo felt his heart, dormant for 5 years, begin to beat again with force. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Patricia realized how close they were and pulled back gently, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I should go up to Antonella for her lessons," she murmured, standing quickly. Marcelo nodded, not trusting his voice to respond. He watched her climb the stairs, and when she disappeared from view, he leaned back on the couch with his eyes closed. Patricia's words echoed in his mind like an unavoidable echo. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to face his demons, to return to Acapulco and close the chapter that kept him chained to the past. But what scared him most wasn't the beach or the memories. It was realizing he was starting to fall in love again. Don't forget to like this video and comment. Love always rises. If you're enjoying this incredible story. A week later, Antonella had fully recovered. Her cheeks were rosy again, her energy boundless, and Dr. Ramirez had given the green light for her to resume normal activities. However, the girl refused to return to school until she fulfilled her promise, to go to Acapulco and say goodbye to her mother. Every night at dinner, she brought up the topic delicately but persistently. Marcelo had finally agreed, more out of love for his daughter than because he was ready to face his ghosts. The date was set for the following weekend. What Marcelo didn't expect was that Antonella had another request, one that caught him completely off guard. It was Thursday afternoon, and Patricia had finished her last official lesson with the girl. Starting the following Monday, Antonella would return to school, and Patricia's visits to the mansion would end. Marcelo had been avoiding thinking about that, about how the house would feel empty again without the teacher's presence, her laughter filling the halls, her warmth transforming every corner. As Patricia came downstairs with her bag over her shoulder, ready to say goodbye, Antonella ran down after her. "Teacher Patricia, wait!" the girl shouted, grabbing her hand. "I have to ask you something very important." Patricia knelt to Antonella's level, smiling tenderly. "Tell me, my beautiful girl, what do you need?" Antonella glanced at her father, who was watching from the foot of the stairs, then turned back to Patricia. "This weekend, we're going to Acapulco, to the beach where my mom died. I'm going to bring her flowers and say goodbye," she explained, her voice trembling. "But I want you to come with us, please." Patricia was speechless, looking to Marcelo for confirmation. He was just as surprised, unsure what to say. "Antonella, my love, we can't ask that of your teacher. It's a very personal family matter," Marcelo said gently. But the girl shook her head, gripping Patricia's hand tighter. "You're always sad when you talk about Mama, Papa, and I know you're scared to go to that beach. But when Teacher Patricia is around, you seem less sad. She makes us both stronger." Antonella's words hit Marcelo like a bolt of undeniable truth. She was right. Patricia's presence made him feel less alone, less broken, but asking her to join them for such an intimate, painful moment seemed like too much. "Antonella, it's just that—" Patricia began, searching for the right words to decline without hurting the girl, but Marcelo interrupted. "If you agree to come, it would be an honor for us," he said firmly, surprising himself. "Antonella's right. Your presence does us good, and after everything you've done for my daughter, for us, I think you're already part of this family." Patricia felt her heart race. Had she heard correctly? Marcelo had just said he considered her part of their family. She looked into his eyes and saw a silent plea, a need that went beyond words. "All right," she agreed finally, her voice trembling. "I'll go with you." Antonella let out a squeal of joy and hugged Patricia so tightly she nearly lost her balance. Marcelo felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief because he wouldn't have to face the trip alone. Terror because every minute spent with Patricia pulled him deeper into feelings he thought he'd buried forever. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparations. Marcelo booked a suite at Acapulco's best hotel, with separate rooms for each of them. Antonella chose the most beautiful bouquets she could find, white roses and lilies, her mother's favorites. Patricia spoke with her own mother, who encouraged her to go, saying that sometimes angels come into people's lives when they need them most. On Friday afternoon, the three set off for Acapulco in Marcelo's SUV. The 4-hour drive passed in comfortable silence, broken only by Antonella's excited questions about the ocean and the stories Patricia made up to entertain her. Marcelo drove with steady hands on the wheel, but his mind was a chaos of memories and emotions. Each kilometer closer to Acapulco made his breathing harder, the knot in his throat tighter. When they finally saw the ocean shimmering under the setting sun, Antonella let out a gasp of awe. "Look how beautiful, Papa. It's like a giant mirror." Marcelo swallowed hard, unable to share his daughter's enthusiasm. To him, that ocean wasn't beautiful. It was a monster that had taken everything from him. They arrived at the hotel as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcelo checked in while Patricia and Antonella admired the elegant lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The rooms were spacious and luxurious, with sea views. Antonella insisted that Patricia's room be next to hers, and Marcelo didn't have the heart to deny his daughter anything. That night, they dined at the hotel restaurant. Antonella was buzzing with excitement, talking nonstop about their plans for the next day. But Marcelo barely touched his food, his gaze lost somewhere beyond the window where the waves crashed against the shore in the darkness. Patricia watched him with concern, wishing she could ease his pain somehow. After dinner, Marcelo tucked Antonella into bed. The girl made him promise not to be sad the next day, to try to be strong for her. Marcelo promised, though he wasn't sure he could keep it. After kissing his daughter goodnight, he stepped into the hallway and found Patricia, who had just left her own room. They stood face to face, unsure what to say. "Thank you for coming," Marcelo murmured finally. "I don't know if I could do this without you." Patricia took a step toward him and, without thinking, hugged him. Marcelo froze for a moment, surprised, but then his arms wrapped around her, clinging to her like a drowning man. In that silent embrace under the dim hallway lights, both knew they had crossed a line they could never uncross. The dawn in Acapulco arrived with a gentle breeze that stirred the curtains in Marcelo's room. He had slept barely 2 hours, tormented by nightmares that woke him in a cold sweat. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mercedes' face sinking beneath the water, heard her screams for help, felt the desperation of not reaching her in time. At 6 a.m., he got up and stood by the window, watching the sun rise over the ocean, tinting the water in shades of gold and pink. It was the same sea that had taken everything from him. But in that moment, with the light of a new day, it seemed less threatening. Perhaps it was just an illusion, a mirage before facing reality. He showered and dressed casually in a beige shirt and white linen pants. When he went down to a hotel restaurant for breakfast, Antonella and Patricia were already there, sharing a table near the window. The girl wore a simple white dress that Marcelo recognized as Mercedes' favorite, the one she saved for special occasions. Patricia wore an olive green dress that highlighted her honey-colored eyes, her hair falling in natural waves over her shoulders. "Good morning, Papa. Did you sleep well?" Antonella asked as he approached. Marcelo lied with a smile. "Very well, my love. And you?" Antonella nodded enthusiastically, but Patricia looked at him with eyes that saw through his lies. She knew he hadn't slept. She could see in the dark circles no amount of cold water could hide. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, interrupted only by Antonella's comments about the day's plans. After breakfast, the three walked to the hotel parking lot. Marcelo had decided they would go to the beach early, before the tourists arrived and the place filled with people. He needed that moment of privacy, of intimacy with his pain and Mercedes' memory. The drive to the beach took just 15 minutes, but to Marcelo, it felt like an eternity. Every curve of the road was painfully familiar. Every landmark sank him deeper into memories. When they finally arrived at the beach, his heart was pounding so hard he thought it would burst from his chest. It was the same place, exactly as he remembered it. Golden sand stretching as far as the eye could see, palm trees swaying in the breeze, the hypnotic sound of waves breaking on the shore. Antonella got out of the SUV, clutching the bouquet of white roses and lilies to her chest. Patricia followed, gently taking the girl's free hand. Marcelo stayed in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, unable to move. It was as if his legs had turned to cement, as if his entire body rebelled against the idea of stepping onto that sand again. Patricia noticed his paralysis and returned to the SUV, opening the driver's door. "Marcelo, look at me," she said firmly but gently. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. We can go back to the hotel and come another day. There's no rush." Marcelo shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. "I've been avoiding this moment for 5 years. If I don't do it now, I never will," he whispered, his voice breaking. "But I'm so scared, Patricia, so scared of feeling that pain again, that helplessness." Patricia extended her hand to him. "You're not alone. I'm here with you. Antonella's here. You don't have to carry this alone." Marcelo looked at her outstretched hand as if it were a lifeline in a storm. Finally, he took it and let her help him out of the SUV. His legs trembled as they touched the sand, but Patricia's hand holding his gave him the strength to keep going. The three walked slowly toward the shore. Each step was a struggle for Marcelo. Each meter brought more vivid memories. Mercedes running across that same sand, her melodious laughter mingling with the sound of the waves. The exact moment she entered the water and shouted that the sea was perfect. When they reached the edge where the waves lapped the sand, Marcelo stopped. He couldn't go further, couldn't get closer to the sea that had taken everything from him. Antonella let go of Patricia's hand and approached her father. She took his hand and looked at him with those honey-colored eyes, identical to Mercedes. "Papa, Mama wouldn't want to see you like this. She always said life was a gift to be celebrated, not feared," the girl said with a maturity beyond her 10 years. "She loved you so much, and I know wherever she is, she wants you to be happy again." Marcelo knelt in the sand before his daughter, tears streaming down his cheeks. "How can I be happy without her, my love? How?" Antonella hugged her father tightly, and Patricia knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around both. The three stayed like that for long minutes, crying together, healing together. Finally, Antonella pulled away and took the bouquet of flowers. She walked to the water with determined steps while Marcelo and Patricia stayed behind, watching her. The girl stopped where the waves reached her bare feet and raised a bouquet to the sky. "Mama, I miss you so much. I think about you every day and how beautiful it was when we were together," she said in a clear, fearless voice. "But I want you to know that Papa takes good care of me, and we're not as sad as we used to be. Now we have someone who makes us smile again." She tossed the flowers into the sea and watched as the waves carried them out, dancing on the water as if Mercedes herself were receiving them. Marcelo watched the scene with a shattered yet strangely relieved heart. It was as if something heavy had lifted from his chest, as if he could finally breathe deeply after 5 years of suffocation. Patricia stood by his side, her presence silent but steadfast, supported him in ways that went beyond the physical. Antonella ran back and hugged her father. "It's done, Papa. We said goodbye. Now we can move forward." Marcelo held her tightly, kissing her head over and over. When he looked up, his eyes met Patricia's, and in that shared gaze, there was a silent promise, a mutual understanding that something fundamental had changed between them. The past was no longer a prison, and the future began to seem like a real possibility. The drive back to Mexico City was entirely different from the trip there. Antonella slept peacefully in the back seat, emotionally exhausted but at peace. Marcelo drove with a calmer expression than he'd had in years, as if an invisible weight had lifted from his shoulders. Patricia sat in the passenger seat, watching the scenery pass by the window, but acutely aware of the man beside her. They had spent the rest of the day in Acapulco, walking along the beach, eating seafood at a restaurant by the sea, letting Antonella play in the sand while they talked about everything and nothing. For the first time in 5 years, Marcelo had spoken to Mercedes, without every word feeling like a stab wound. He had shared beautiful memories with Patricia, how they met at university, their first day at a cafe in Coyoacán, the day Antonella was born and Mercedes cried with joy. He had learned that remembering loved ones didn't have to mean pain, that their memory could be honored without being trapped in it. Patricia had listened to it all with infinite patience, without judgment, without rushing him, simply being present. And Marcelo had discovered that talking about Mercedes with someone who hadn't known her was strangely liberating. "What are you thinking about?" Patricia asked softly, breaking the silence that had reigned for the last hour of the drive. Marcelo smiled without taking his eyes off the road. "I'm thinking that a week ago, I wouldn't have believed it possible to feel like this. At peace, almost happy," he admitted in a hoarse voice. "And it's all thanks to you." Patricia shook her head. "It wasn't thanks to me. It was thanks to your courage to face your fears. I was just there to support you." Marcelo fell silent for a moment, choosing his next words carefully. "Patricia, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been feeling for days but was too scared to admit." Patricia felt her heart race. She turned in her seat to face him, waiting. "I don't know exactly what happened," Marcelo continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe it was the first time I saw you with Antonella, or when you spoke to me with that brutal honesty about my pain. But the truth is, you awakened something in me that I thought was dead forever. You've made me feel alive again." Patricia felt tears well in her eyes. She had sensed what Marcelo was going to say, but hearing out loud was entirely different. "Marcelo, she began, but he gently interrupted. "You don't have to say anything now. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest with you after everything you've done for us, he said, glancing at her briefly before turning his eyes to the road. I know it's complicated. I know it might be too soon, that I carry too much emotional baggage. But for the first time in 5 years, I have hope, and that hope has your name. Patricia wiped the tears streaming down her cheeks. It's not too soon, Marcelo. The heart doesn't understand time or calendars, she whispered. And I felt something special for you since we met. It scared me because you're a widower, because you have a daughter, because we come from such different worlds. But none of that matters when I'm with you. Marcelo felt his chest expand with an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. Pure joy mixed with terrifying vulnerability. So is there a chance for us? He asked, his voice trembling. Patricia placed her hand over his, which rested on the gear shift. I think we're past the point of a chance, Marcelo. I think this is already happening, whether we like it or not. The question is whether we're willing to give a shot. Marcelo intertwined his fingers with hers, feeling a warmth that went beyond the physical. When they reached Mexico City, it was already night. Marcelo dropped Patricia off at her small apartment in the Narvart neighborhood. Before she got out of the SUV, Marcelo turned off the engine and faced her. Patricia, I know Antonella's lessons are officially over, but I'd like you to keep coming to the house. Not as a teacher, but as part of our lives, he said nervously. Antonella adores you, and I don't want this to end here. Patricia smiled tenderly. I'd love to keep seeing you both, she replied, then leaned in and softly kissed Marcelo's cheek. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. As she got out of the SUV and entered her building, Marcelo sat for long minutes with his hand on the cheek where she had kissed him, smiling like a teenager. Antonella woke up in the back seat and leaned forward. Are we home, Papa? Marcelo started the engine again and headed toward Polanco. Almost, my love, almost. But Antonella noticed something different in her father. There was a light in his eyes she hadn't seen in years, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Papa, did you tell Teacher Patricia you like her? The girl asked mischievously. Marcelo blushed slightly, something Antonella had never seen. Why do you ask that, my love? It's written all over your face, she replied, laughing. And I'm so happy. Mama will be glad to know you found someone as good as Teacher Patricia. Marcelo felt a lump in his throat, but this time it was from positive emotion. His daughter was right. Mercedes would never have wanted him to spend the rest of his life alone, trapped in pain. She had always been generous, loving, full of life. She would have wanted him to be happy again, for Antonella to have a maternal figure who cared for her with love. That night, after tucking Antonella in, Marcelo sat in his office and pulled out a photograph of Mercedes he kept in a drawer. He looked at it for a long time, memorizing every detail of her face, then spoke aloud as if she could hear him. I know this might feel like a betrayal, my love, but I need to move forward. I need to live again, for me and for our daughter, he whispered, tears in his eyes. I'll always love you, Mercedes. You'll always be part of me. But I've met someone who makes me feel there's still hope in this world. Someone who cares for Antonella as if she were her own. And I think you'd approve. He placed the photo back in the drawer, but this time he didn't lock it as he usually did. It was time to let the past rest in peace and embrace the future stretching before him, full of possibilities that no longer terrified him. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of emotion for Marcelo. Patricia had accepted his invitation and continued visiting the mansion, but now not as a teacher, but as a special guest. They shared lunches on weekends, went to the park, the movies, or for ice cream in Condessa. Antonella was radiant, happier than Marcelo had seen her in years. The girl had returned to school with renewed energy and couldn't stop talking about Patricia to her classmates, proudly saying her favorite teacher was now practically part of her family. Marcelo found himself thinking of Patricia at every moment. During business meetings, his mind wandered to her laughter. In the middle of the night, when he couldn't sleep, he'd pick up his phone just to see if she had sent a message. He felt like a teenager experiencing first love, and it both scared and thrilled him. But despite all the time they spent together, Marcelo hadn't dared to take the next step. They hadn't spoken directly about their feelings since that night on the road. They hadn't defined what they were to each other. It was as if both feared that putting things into words might break the magic of the moment. Everything changed one Sunday afternoon when Patricia arrived at the mansion for a family lunch. Consuelo had prepared mole poblano, red rice, and beans, filling the house with delicious aromas reminiscent of grandmother's cooking. Antonella had insisted on setting the table herself, placing fresh flowers in the center and the finest porcelain dishes. When Patricia entered the dining room, she was pleasantly surprised by the details. She wore a mustard yellow dress that made her brown skin glow and highlighted the warmth of her honey-colored eyes. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, with just a touch of natural makeup. Marcelo felt the air leave his lungs when he saw her. Every day, he found her more beautiful, not just physically, but in her essence, in the way she lit up every space she entered. "Teacher Patricia, you look so pretty," Antonella exclaimed, running to hug her. "Come, sit here next to Papa." The girl practically pushed Patricia toward the chair beside Marcelo, with a conspiratorial smile that neither adult missed. Marcelo gave his daughter a warning look, but Antonella just shrugged with feigned innocence. The meal was filled with joy and lively conversation. Antonella shared school anecdotes. Patricia told funny stories about other students without revealing names, and Marcelo simply enjoyed having the two most important women in his life at his table. It was something he had stopped dreaming of long ago, this feeling of family, of home, of belonging. When they finished eating, Antonella yawned dramatically and announced she was very tired and needed a nap. Marcelo looked at her suspiciously, knowing full well his daughter never took naps and that this was clearly a ploy to leave him alone with Patricia. "All right, my love, go rest," he said, playing along. Antonella kissed her father, and then Patricia on the cheek, whispering something in her ear that made the teacher blush. Then she ran upstairs, leaving the two adults alone in the dining room. Marcelo and Patricia looked at each other and laughed simultaneously, aware of the girl's obvious but sweet manipulation. "Your daughter is very clever," Patricia commented, taking a sip of her hibiscus water. Marcelo nodded proudly. "Too clever for her own good. Sometimes I wonder if she's the one raising me." There was a moment of comfortable silence, but it was charged with something unspoken. Marcelo knew it was now or never. If he didn't speak now, if he didn't express what he felt, he might lose a chance forever. Patricia could grow tired of waiting, could interpret his silence as disinterest. He couldn't risk that. "Patricia, I need to talk to you about something important," he began, turning in his chair to face her directly. "I've spent 2 weeks trying to find the perfect moment, the perfect words, but I've realized there's no such thing." Patricia set her glass down, giving him her full attention. Her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "These past months have been the most transformative of my life," Marcelo continued, his voice trembling slightly. "You came into my home as Antonella's teacher, but you became so much more than that. You became light when everything was dark, hope when I had lost all faith. You showed me it's possible to live again, that honoring the past doesn't mean being trapped in it." Patricia felt tears well in her eyes, but held them back. She wanted to hear every word, to etch this moment into her memory forever. "I know I'm not an easy man. I carry deep scars, fears that sometimes paralyze me, but what I feel for you is stronger than all of that." Marcelo took Patricia's hand in his, feeling the tremble of her fingers. "I've fallen in love with you, Patricia, completely, irrevocably in love, and I know it's a huge risk to ask this of you, but would you give me the chance to love you, to build something real with you?" Patricia let the tears fall freely down her cheeks. For weeks, she had held back her own feelings, afraid to pressure Marcelo, out of respect for his healing process. But hearing him say those words was like a weight lifting from her chest she hadn't known she was carrying. "Marcelo, I've fallen in love with you too," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I tried to resist, to tell myself it was just admiration or compassion. But the truth is, every day I spend with you and Antonella makes me feel more complete, more at home. You too have become my family, the most important thing in my life." Marcelo felt his heart expand in his chest. He leaned toward her, bringing his face closer slowly, giving her time to pull away as she wanted, but Patricia didn't pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes, and when their lips finally met, It was as if the entire world stopped. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, full of promises and hopes. Then it deepened, years of loneliness and pain dissolving in that contact. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. "I love you, Patricia," Marcelo whispered again, needing to say it as many times as possible. "And I love you," she replied, caressing his cheek tenderly. From the top of the stairs, hidden behind the railing, Antonella watched the scene with a huge smile. Her plan had worked perfectly. She ran downstairs and threw herself into their arms, shouting with joy and proclaiming that they were now a real family. 6 months had passed since that afternoon when Marcelo and Patricia confessed their love. 6 months of learning to be a couple, of building a relationship based on respect, trust, and genuine love. It hadn't been an easy path. Marcelo still had difficult days, moments when guilt crept in, and he wondered if he had the right to be happy again. But Patricia was always there to remind him that Mercedes would have wanted exactly this for him and Antonella. Patricia, for her part, had faced gossip from some acquaintances who questioned her relationship with a millionaire, insinuating she was only after his money. But she had learned to ignore those venomous comments, knowing in her heart that what she felt for Marcelo was pure and true. Antonella had been the perfect bridge between them, keeping them united in tough moments, celebrating every small step in their relationship. The girl had blossomed in ways Marcelo never thought possible. She was no longer the sad little girl who lost her mother, but a vibrant, joyful child who now had a loving maternal figure in her life. Things had progressed naturally between them. Patricia spent more and more time at the mansion, first weekends, then some weekdays, until finally Marcelo asked her to move in with them. It was a Saturday morning when Marcelo made the decision. He had planned everything carefully with the complicity of Antonella and Consuelo. The 3 most important women in his life were now in the mansion's garden, where he had arranged a special breakfast. Patricia didn't suspect anything when she arrived that morning, thinking it would be a normal family day. But when she saw the garden decorated with flowers of all kinds, a table elegantly set with white linens and fine china, she knew something special was about to happen. Marcelo wore a cream-colored shirt and gray pants, his casual appearance impeccable. Antonella wore a pink lace dress and couldn't stop smiling nervously. "What's going on here?" Patricia asked, looking around in amazement. Marcelo approached her and took her hands tenderly. "Patricia, these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life since I lost Mercedes. You've taught me that the human heart has an infinite capacity to love, that we're not limited to one love in life. You've shown me it's possible to build something new without forgetting who we were. And I want you to know that you are the love of my present and my future." Patricia felt her legs tremble. Was this what she thought it was? Marcelo let go of one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small blue velvet box. Antonella let out a squeal of excitement, bouncing in place. "Patricia, I can't imagine a single day of my life without you," Marcelo continued, kneeling before her. "You've filled this house with love, healed our wounds. You've turned our broken family into something beautiful and complete. And though I know it's soon, though I know many would say we should wait longer, my heart tells me that when something is right, there's no reason to wait." He opened the box, revealing a white gold ring with a solitary diamond. Elegant but not ostentatious, perfect for Patricia's simple style. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife, of officially being Antonella's mother and my life's companion?" Patricia covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks uncontrollably. She had dreamed of this moment since she fell in love with Marcelo, but she never thought it would come so soon. She looked at Antonella, who nodded enthusiastically, her eyes shining with happiness. Then she looked back at Marcelo, the man she had come to love with every fiber of her being. "Yes, Marcelo, yes, I'll marry you," she replied, her voice breaking with emotion. "Nothing would make me happier than being your wife and Antonella's mom." Marcelo leapt to his feet and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he took her in his arms and kissed her with all the passion and love he felt for her. Antonella ran to them, and the 3 melted into a family embrace, laughing and crying at the same time. Consuelo watched from the kitchen door, wiping tears with her apron and thanking God for bringing joy back to this family. The following months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Patricia had insisted on something simple, intimate, with only close family and dear friends. Marcelo had wanted to give her the grandest, most luxurious wedding in the city, but he quickly learned that with Patricia, it wasn't about extravagance, but meaning. The ceremony took place in a small chapel in Coyoacán, decorated with white flowers and natural light streaming through the stained glass windows. Antonella was a flower girl, wearing a white dress with pink details and carrying a small bouquet of roses. Patricia walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, who wept with joy seeing her daughter so radiant. She wore an elegant, simple white dress that enhanced her natural beauty. When Marcelo saw her enter, he felt reborn. The vows were emotional and honest. Marcelo promised to love and protect her every day of his life, to honor her kindness and patience, to be the man she deserved. Patricia promised to love him on good days and bad, to be the mother Antonella needed, to build a home full of love and laughter. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the kiss they shared sealed not only their union, but also the complete healing of two souls who had found their way back to life. The reception was held in the mansion's garden, transformed into a magical space with hanging lights, elegantly simple tables, and live music. Marcelo and Patricia danced their first dance as husband and wife, while Antonella watched with absolute adoration. That night, after the guests left and Antonella finally fell asleep from all the excitement, Marcelo and Patricia sat together on their bedroom balcony, looking at the stars. "Can you believe that a year ago I was an empty man trapped in my pain?" Marcelo murmured, holding his wife close. "And now I have everything I ever dreamed of and more." Patricia nestled against him, perfectly at peace. Life has mysterious ways of healing what's broken. Sometimes we just need to have faith and open our hearts to the possibilities. Marcelo kissed her forehead tenderly. Together, they had built something beautiful from the ruins of pain, and now the future stretched before them, full of love, hope, and the promise of many happy years as a family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss more stories that will make you believe in true love. Remember that after the darkest storm, the brightest sun always comes, that past wounds don't have to define our future, and that love, when it's true and pure, has the power to heal everything. May God bless your life, fill you with hope, and allow you to find a happiness you deserve, just as these characters did. Never stop believing in new beginnings, because every day is an opportunity to write a different story. See you in the next one.